All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate everyone taking the time out to attend my January webinar. I do apologize for not having the December webinar and trying to reschedule it. Just haven't been able to make that happen. I do apologize. So this webinar is actually going to be on common drug use among teens, which was what originally was planned for in January, and then also driving under the influence laws of marijuana, comparing that with the alcohol law. So we're going to do a combination of both today. Again, my name is Madison Elliott. For those of you who don't know me, I work for Talbot County Public Schools under Office of Student Services. Any questions that you have, please feel free to type in the chat or the Q&A. And I'll be happy to type in my email too as well. I'm always looking for new ideas of what to teach everyone here in my webinar. So if you have any, ideas or something that you want me to teach more on, I'm more than welcome to do that. Let's get started. Play from the start. All right, so common drug use among teens is how we're gonna start out, and then move into driving under the influence laws of marijuana and comparing it to alcohol. All right, so I wanted to talk about some recent 2022, 2023 data, stats of, the most commonly used drugs among teens, adolescents, that finding, across the country nationally that a lot of teens are using. And the data is actually pretty shocking. Definitely a lot more than what I thought I was going to find. But so according to national surveys data, nicotine vaping, marijuana use, alcohol use are the most commonly reported substances among teens. With nicotine vaping, more than 2.1 million youth currently use vaping devices. About 1 out of every 4 use vaping devices daily, and about 9 out of 10 youth use the flavored vaping devices, so like the fruity flavors, tobacco flavors. Those have definitely become more popular, but at least that I've seen that that teens are using. The flavors are also the most addictive chemical in the vapes and the vaping pods. So it's definitely something to look out for with the vapes, or if you suspect your child is vaping. The flavorings are the most addictive. And then also 10%, which is roughly about 1.56 million high school students, and about 4.6% middle school students reported current use. This is a national data, so across the country, of high school and middle school students who reported ever using a vape, currently using a vape. However, interestingly enough, there has been, I guess, a slight decrease with high school students reported use of any tobacco products. So regular cigarettes, vapes, any other drug that's just tobacco, nicotine, any tobacco product. But there has been an increase, about 2% increase in middle school students using any type of tobacco products. So it's interesting. There's kind of a decrease with high school, which you would think that would, you would think the 2% would go up to the high school versus the middle school, but these middle school students are finding ways to, access tobacco, nicotine products, and they're using them more to, peer influence, trying to be cool, stuff like that. And I thought that was really interesting. For marijuana use, teen marijuana abuse has increased 245% over the past 20 years. About 43% of high school seniors report using, and 10% report driving under the influence of marijuana. About 80% of high school students report marijuana has become more easily accessible, so how they're able to access getting marijuana, using it. About 80%, so more than half of high school students are saying that it's very easy for them to get marijuana when they want it. And then this was at the bottom, this was a survey taken with mainly for 8th graders, and then 10th and 12th graders, so kind of across high school. 8% 8th graders, 20% 10th graders, and 30% 12th graders have used marijuana. And that was with one national survey. And students who reported using. The underage drinking stats, so this was 2022, most updated data that I could find. About 20% of youth ages 14 to 15 reported having at least one drink. About 5.9 million youth ages 12 to 20 reported drinking more than a few sips of alcohol within a month. But recent studies show that youth often, they tend to binge drink more than just having a drink every now and then. So between the ages of 12 and 20, they're saying that about 3.4% of those kids, or 3.4% of all alcohol consumed in the US, kids are drinking less than adults. However, when kids do drink, they are drinking more in that short time period versus having a drink every now and then. When they do have access to alcohol and drinking, they are drinking, one after the other, after the other, after the other. More than 90% of all alcoholic drinks consumed by youth are consumed through binge drinking. That's a lot, more than 90%. So this is saying that more than 90% of all alcohol drinks that youth are able to access, youth are binge drinking those drinks. About 3.2 million youth ages 12 to 20 reported binge drinking at least or within a 1 month. And then about 646,000 youth ages 12 to 20 reported binge drinking on 5 or more days over the past month, which that's a lot. This data also surprised me a little bit, just because with my current experience, I see, at least with me, unless this is also what we're just finding here at the schools, I see more of the kids are choosing to, use marijuana vape versus drinking, or prefer to do one or the other. But this is just in school reports. This isn't what the kids do after school from what I do in my data. So, but this, yeah, kids are binge drinking. They're binge drinking more than adults, according to this data. I thought this was interesting. So like I was saying, more adolescents use alcohol than tobacco or marijuana. This is the data on that. So as you can see, between the ages 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, those are, and their alcohol is the blue bars. Those have a much bigger percentage increase. And then right below that a little bit is marijuana, and then it's tobacco. So tobacco tends to be fairly lower compared to marijuana and alcohol. But I believe from looking at this data, marijuana and alcohol are very close in this data with what adolescents, teens are using more. So other drug use, so we talk about the vaping, the marijuana, alcohol, all more well-known, commonly used drugs that teens are using these days. However, some parents don't think about other drugs, illicit drug use, injection drugs. Teens are also unfortunately doing that as well. Prescription drugs, opioids. This is also recent 2022-2023 data. 15% of high school students reported ever having used illicit or injection drugs. So cocaine, inhalants, heroin, meth, hallucinogens, and ecstasy would be in those categories of the whole 15% national data. About 14% of students reported misusing prescription opioids. 9.4% of high school seniors admit to using prescription drugs without a prescription. 20% of high school seniors report using illicit drugs over marijuana. So instead of using marijuana, they're doing, cocaine or heroin or inhalants. About 5% of high school seniors report using synthetic drugs, and that could be like K2 or spice. 7% of high school seniors report misusing over-the-counter cough and cold medications. And I thought this was really important to get out there to parents here in the Bold 1.3 million teens aged 12 to 17 need treatment for substance abuse. However, only 10% ever receive it. So it's definitely something to keep in mind in terms of what's out there in the community, how we can better support and help our kids in the community who may be struggling, what signs to look out for that a child may be struggling with substance abuse, but it's not quite visible to parents or to anyone in the community that they may be using. So I thought that was really important to share with you guys. All right, so that was a little shorter. I tried to make that topic a little bit shorter since I'm combining two topics today with the parent webinars. So now we're going to move into effects of marijuana use and driving, and like I said, comparing that to alcohol driving laws. So talking about the scope of the problem. So from about 2000 to 2018, the number of motor vehicle fatalities involving cannabis has more than doubled from 9% to 22%. However, the percentage of fatalities involving alcohol remain the same. Drivers under the influence of alcohol were 17.8 times more likely to cause fatal crashes first than sober drivers. However, drivers under the influence of marijuana are 25% more likely to be involved in a car crash than sober drivers. More than 9% of drivers ages 16 and 20 admit to have driven under the influence of marijuana, more than 9%. So definitely with the, especially with the new legalization with marijuana, definitely, driving safely, looking out for everyone on the road is very, very important these days, because you are going to have people who are driving under the influence of marijuana more now that the legalization is here in Maryland. So definitely something to look out for. According to National Highway Transportation Safety, studies between 6% and 32% of traffic accidents had a driver who tested positive for cannabis. About 9.7% of cannabis users reported having driven under the influence with an average of 8 times per year. So, they're driving under the influence a little more frequently when they are driving. An analysis of over 60 international studies found that marijuana causes impairment in every performance area connected with safe driving, including tracking, motor coordination, visual functions, and more complex tasks. So most crashes involve swerving between lanes due to poor lane control, slower driving to maintain lane control, or decrease speed. So driving under the influence of marijuana, individuals just aren't. They think they're, because I've definitely heard people saying, oh, I drive a lot better when I'm high, when I'm smoking, using marijuana. So it sounds like they're not really fully aware of, they're swerving lanes. They're not driving quite up to the speed limit. They're not driving straight. Yeah, so kind of the same thing as when you're drunk driving, how someone drunk driving would be driving as well. So alcohol versus marijuana or cannabis. So for alcohol, there are universally accepted quantities of a single drink or dose. For alcohol, dose is about 12 ounces of regular beer, 5 ounces of wine, 1.5 ounces of distilled spirits, and each dose is about 0.02 BAC. And so 0.08 is the legal driving limit, which is equivalent to about 4 to 5 drinks. But of course that varies with, gender, your size, your weight, type of beverage, how much you're drinking, consumption. For marijuana, it is still federally criminalized for using marijuana, having marijuana. But there is no standard equivalent of a dose like alcohol has. It's difficult to determine how much was used by the user, and hard for the driver to assess how much is too much to drive. We don't have enough, technology yet to really, show that when someone is under the influence of marijuana, it's harder for, police officer to determine, how much they've already smoked, what they originally had on them versus what they have on them now. Effects on drivers, driver under the influence, measures on how recent marijuana use affects driving are imprecise. Cannabis can stay in the human body and show up in a positive drug test for 28 days. So like normally within a month of, usually marijuana stays in your system for about a month when you use it. A user or driver cannot predict how they will be impaired and for how long. You never know when you smoke it, your reaction, all the reactions that you may have, or how long you'll be impaired for. Smoking creates a high within first couple minutes of using it. A return to your normal level, so not being high anymore, takes 3 to 4 hours, but the feeling of wearing off can occur earlier. So it also depends on your tolerance at that point when you're using marijuana. Consuming edibles takes longer to get that high people are looking for, with unpredictable duration. The length of time to feel effects may lead to ingesting more edibles and feeling okay to drive. So, someone could be taking edible and they'll be good for a good bit of time before the edible really kicks in. And that could happen long into their driving. And then that's when their driving becomes very impaired. It could be 20, 30 minutes down the road before they feel it. Drunk drivers tend to go faster and take more risks. Drivers high on cannabis are likely to drive slower, being more, I guess, like paranoid or like unreasonably cautious and overreact to situations on the road. Alcohol is the most common cause of motor vehicle crashes, and cannabis is the second most common cause. So why is it risky to drive high? So marijuana affects, different parts of the brain that control your memory, your sensory, coordination, learning, your ability to concentrate, time perception, and your attention span. The NHTSA found that diligence, perception of speed and timing, and use of acquired knowledge are all affected by marijuana. Effects of cannabis on drivers, the physical effects, that feeling of like being like sedated, feeling very, very much relaxed, changes in appetite, not being able to sleep well, having more difficulty breathing, and increased heart rate and blood pressure. In terms of like your behavioral and mood, lack of motivation, restlessness, dizziness, impaired coordination, slowed reflexes, drowsiness, irritability, paranoia, slurred speech, clumsiness, slowed motor skills, and nodding off. Changes in mood from, euphoria to depression, are all, so pretty much, the same effects you would get from using cannabis, without driving are the same when you are driving. This all could happen to you. In terms of mental health and effects on cannabis on drivers, impaired mental functioning can include having, unpleasant thoughts, not so happy thoughts, paranoia, anxiety, possible panic attacks. More people do report having more panic attacks or their first panic attacks when they start using marijuana. Depression, suicidal thoughts or attempts, temporary psychosis, such as delusions, hallucinations, and paranoia. So these are all possible side effects that could happen when using marijuana to your mental health. Cognitive effects. So cannabis alters your perception of what is and isn't safe. This study was done in a random trial that included like driving simulations. So in that trial, they found that within 30 minutes after getting high, nearly 50% reported feeling safe to drive. After 90 minutes, nearly 70% considered themselves safe, although they performed as poorly as the earlier group. So, and then the maximum impairment was found at 20 to 40 minutes after smoking. So this study is saying that when people are under the influence of marijuana and driving, I guess, their thoughts are, their thoughts are misinformed by using marijuana, consumed by marijuana. So they think that, same as alcohol, when you're drunk driving, you think that, oh, like I'm so unstoppable. I drive better, I'm feeling good. I feel more focused, stuff like that. But that's just, your brain's got all these different chemicals going on in your head, and you're not thinking properly, you're not recognizing things properly. This is causing people to think that, they're great drivers when you're under the influence. So, which is definitely not something you want to, someone who is driving soberly. It scares me to, drive on the road and think that, oh, the person next to me driving can be under the influence right now and could crash into me. But they think that they're, the best drivers right now. Cannabis overdose users feel sick up to 2 hours after smoking or ingestion. They may experience panic attacks having a cannabis overdose. They're more likely to occur with alcohol, before or during smoking, but alcohol in the bloodstream can speed up THC absorption. Typically occurs with overconsumption. So going over the tolerance level is normally how marijuana overdose happens. Cannabis and fentanyl, because that is being found more and more these days, fentanyl being laced in marijuana. People don't overdose on marijuana, they overdose on the fentanyl. That they may or may not be aware of that was already in the marijuana. Marijuana may be sprayed with a liquid fentanyl or sprinkled with a powder. Illicit fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine and 30 to 50 times more powerful than heroin. Effects of opioids include shallow breathing, slowed heart rate, colder, clammy skin, nodding out. Impaired driving behaviors from studies report increased reaction time, increased decision time when passing, incorrect responses to emergencies, poor lane control, poor monitoring your speed when driving, increased time needed to brake, to use your brakes when like the light turns red or a stop sign, increased time needed to respond to a changing light or a sudden sound, more frequent crashes into sudden obstacles. So they're crashing into things or cars. Signs please look out for: red eyes, paraphernalia, lack of concentration, poor hand-eye coordination, decreased perception of time and distance, decreased short-term memory, odor of cannabis, delayed or decreased reaction time, lack of coordination. So these are all signs that police tend to look for, try to look for when they think someone may be under the influence of marijuana. The legal consequences would be smoking, possessing, and growing marijuana, which is legal in Maryland for adults. You have to be 21 or older. Those over 21 can legally possess up to 1.5 ounces of marijuana. More than 1.5 ounces, but less than 2.5 ounces will result in a civil fine of up to $250. Possession of more than 2.5 ounces could face up to 6 months in jail and a fine up to $1,000. Legal driving consequences for driving under the influence. Driving with any amount of marijuana in one system is illegal. This type of law is often referred to as the per se DUI, because marijuana found at any level in the driver's system can result in a DUI arrest. Law enforcement officers can make a cannabis DUI arrest if they observe impairment using a standard field sobriety test, so a roadside test, walking the straight line. A blood test may also be administered. Person must be driving or attempting to drive, even an intent matters. Under the influence, the drug should have a substantial impact on normal motor coordination. And the driver may also be cited for negligence, driving and reckless driving. And those are some references I wanted to give you guys on my data and research on this. Yep. Please let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend my webinars. Let's see. Trying to go back to, does anyone have any questions? This will also, be recorded and shared through TCPS social media and my page on social media. Well, thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Like I said, give me ideas of what also I can share on these webinars as well, of what you want to learn about. All right, thank you.